Reinventing education. Schools teach many things that are not as useful to us in our adult lives. It seems that we don't use more than 37% of everything we learn in school. Some say it's no more than 15%. Students memorize a lot of information and then forget them after exams because they never use them again. What a waste of time and energy for young people. We need to understand where the public school in the form we know it today came from, namely, a closed facility that can house several hundred or even thousands of kids, classrooms for about 20 students with individual double tables to sit quietly all day, classes of kids of the same age, one adult teacher per class, a rigid time structure of serial classes separated by a bell and short breaks, standardized testing, which is essentially based on the regurgitation of memorized information, ranking students by grading system that penalizes error rather than celebrating it as a learning opportunity, a system that encourages competition rather than collaboration among students. Why keep children in classrooms where they are conditioned to sit for long hours like in factories or administrative offices with the supervisor controlling their work and productivity? Now that I think about it, it's true that we rarely ask ourselves these questions. We tend to believe that this is the best system for educating young people. But how did we arrive at this kind of industrial instruction? Professor John Taylor Gatto, awarded the best teacher in the city and state of New York 3 years in a row, has revealed the modern history of public education in his excellent book, An Underground History of American Education. Forced schooling for the entire population, or nearly so, with a single curriculum decided by the state, has been an ideal since Plato, as described in his book The Republic. The first successful nationwide experiment probably occurred in the military regime of Prussia, a state in northeastern Europe, in the first half of the 19th century. Let's learn the story of the Prussian education system and how it spread worldwide to become the norm. The Prussian education system in the 19th century. We must go back to the beginning of the 19th century to find the moment in history that marks the decisive turning point in the conception of the public school as we know it today. After the crushing defeat of the Prussians by the French army of Napoleon Bonaparte at the Battle of Jena in 1806, Prussia, under Frederick the Great, decided to undertake a major reconstruction of its education and training system on a national scale. The goal was to train an army of determined soldiers and hard-working workers who were docile and easily moldable to the new needs of the industry, the government, and the military. If, on the one hand, the educational system with forced schooling had the credit of teaching the population how to read, write, and count, it also constituted, on the other hand, a means of indoctrination per excellence. It was effective in making the popular masses docile by creating a uniformity of thought as well as an intellectual and emotional dependence of the youth. It took Prussia only a few years to build up a powerful state, industry, and army that would take revenge on the French army at Waterloo in 1815. The world's great powers then developed a fascination for the Prussian model. Components of this system have thus served as models for the education systems of several industrialized countries such as the United States, Japan, and France. The Prussian system instituted compulsory schooling, specific teacher training, nationally standardized tests for all students used to classify young people for vocational training, and a national curriculum designed for each grade. Thus, the Prussian ruling elite tried to teach social obedience to citizens through indoctrination. Indeed, everyone had to be convinced that the nation's leader was just, that his decisions were always right, and that total obedience to him was paramount. A series of decrees established, clearly and for the first time, that education is a task of the state. This development finally culminated in 1763 when Frederick II made schooling compulsory for all children between the ages of 5 and 13. The work of the French philosopher Victor Cousin, Rapport sur l'état de l'instruction publique en Prusse, seems to have significantly influenced the conception of the educational system in France and in other European countries. The United States adopts the Prussian education system. In 1840, Horace Mann became the head of the first Board of Education in the state of Massachusetts. He played a determining role in the adoption of the Prussian educational system. As a great admirer of this model, Mann visited Prussia in 1843 to study its educational system. On his return, he published the famous Eighth Report, in which he praised the achievements of the Prussian system, which had produced a powerful army and industry in a short time. In 1852, Horace Mann was instrumental in adopting the Prussian education system throughout Massachusetts. In 1852, the first law in North America to make compulsory schooling for children was promulgated in Massachusetts. The other American states would follow one after the other, starting with the state of New York, which created more than a dozen large public schools on this model. At the beginning of the 20th century, and more precisely between 1906 and 1920, Edward Thorndike and John Dewey of Columbia Teachers College, with their allies among the great industrialists such as John D. Rockefeller and Andrew Carnegie, and the rich bankers such as J.P. Morgan, invested in the development of public schools and their curricula through their private foundation. These foundations also influenced the selection of senior administrators in education boards and universities. They invested more in public school development and educational psychology than the US government. In the first report issued by John D. Rockefeller's Council in 1915, there's a quote from the original mission of the compulsory public school project. Quote, "In our dreams, people yield themselves with perfect docility to our molding hands. The task is simple. We will organize children and teach them in a perfect way the things their fathers and mothers are doing in an imperfect way." So what should the fundamental goals of education be then? The fundamental goals of education. According to Professor John Taylor Gatto, the three fundamental goals of education should be: 1. To grow morally good people. 2. To develop active citizenship among youth. 3. To help young people identify and nurture their talents to thrive and make the best possible contribution to the community. So how can we make schools achieve these goals? And are there other more innovative models of education? Democratic schools. The case of Sudbury Valley Schools. The Finnish education system is worth studying, as it is ranked among the best education systems in the world by the World Economic Forum's Global Competitiveness Report. That said, the model of democratic schools, like the Sudbury Valley Schools, is even more innovative. These schools have spread to several US states and developed countries such as Japan, Canada, Belgium, and Germany. Founded in 1968 in Framingham, Massachusetts, students at this school can decide how to spend their time each day. They're not required to attend classes. They are free to choose the subjects that interest them and join learning circles led by passionate instructors. Students also make the most important decisions about the operation of the school. At governance councils, in which students of all ages are represented and are a majority, they decide which faculty members will have their contracts renewed each year. They also determine the choice of various suppliers and rule on situations of non-compliance with school rules. In short, it is a school led by the students who are empowered from an early age to practice democratic governance, instead of just studying it theoretically. They learn from older students and accompany those who are younger. The age mix in these groups thus greatly enriches their learning experience. This private school model, which welcomes young people from 4 to 19 years old, is built on three fundamental principles: freedom in education, democratic governance, and personal responsibility. Studies have also shown that this model of democratic schools is also less expensive to operate than public schools. Why not have a school where learning is based on play, exciting hands-on projects, and stimulating discussions? Don't we see in nature how all young animals learn to survive and develop their instincts and ability through play? Today, we need to build more educational games and exciting films that allow students to acquire useful knowledge in a more playful and even more advanced way than with textbooks.